This isn't about bad decision. It's about how contracts were designed. Before anyone ever talked about masters, before anyone debated fair deals, ownership had already been decided. Imagine stepping into freedom and realizing you still don't own what you produce. Your body is no longer claimed. Your labor is no longer forced. But the value created by your work still doesn't belong to you. That wasn't an accident of history. It was structure. When Black musicians entered the recording industry, recordings felt like access. Your voice could travel, your sound could last, but contracts treated recordings like something else separate from the artist. The moment a performance was fixed to a tape or disc, the recording itself was classified as a manufactured object. Property belonging to the party that financed the creation, not the performer, not the writer, the company. That single definition shaped everything that followed. Once a recording was legally defined as property, it could be duplicated, licensed, repackaged, and sold indefinitely. Access formats that didn't even exist yet. The artist could be successful. Music could define a generation. Ownership didn't move. You can see this clearly in artists like Bessie Smith and Muddy Waters, foundational figures, massive cultural impact, yet the recording that shaped the modern music remained owned by infrastructures or institutions that outlived them. Publishing didn't solve the problem. Many artists were credited as writers, but contracts separated authorship from authority. Administrative rights, licensing control, collection power. The ownership existed on paper. Control lived elsewhere. Names were sometimes removed. Credits reassigned. In the race records era, Black artists were visible in marketing but invisible to the law. Later, the law attempted to address this. In 1976, Copyright Act introduced termination rights, the possibility of reclaiming ownership after decades. But reversions came with conditions most artists couldn't realistically meet. Narrow filing windows, complex legal requirements, costs that exceed the value of what might be recovered. Many artists never lived long enough to reclaim anything at all. The recordings kept earning. That's how catalogs became power centers. Not because the artists disappeared, but because contracts were written to survive them. As the industry modernized, the language hardened. Work-for-hire clauses eliminated reversions entirely. Cross collateralization tied unrelated projects together. Ownership stayed fixed even when revenue models changed. It didn't end with streaming. It just changed form. Today, platforms continue to control access instead of factories. Algorithms replace warehouses. But contracts still decide who benefits after release. That's why an artist can generate millions of streams and still feel broke, while catalogs are bought, sold, and leveraged like real estate. A modern example makes this clear. Artists like Prince had the visibility, the audience, and the influence, and still had to fight public to regain control over the work he created. Not because the music lacked value, but because the contracts were designed to protect ownership beyond the artist's reach. I understood this differently, because it came from the outside the system. I owned my recordings, distributed myself, and sold directly. But I could feel the limits. Visibility depends on systems I didn't own. Growth depends on platforms I couldn't control. Ownership without structure didn't compound. While touring, I was sketching out ideas about performances, late nights turned into really early mornings, and sitting on the computer trying to build something that didn't reset every time a project ended. Learning how early artists lost their masters didn't feel distant. It felt instructional. They didn't lose ownership because they failed to negotiate. They lost it because ownership was never embedded into the system surrounding their work. That's the part that carries forward. Masters weren't about ego. They were about time. They determine who benefits years later, who licensed culture, who controls what survives after the attention fades. Black artists lost their masters because contracts were designed to protect the recording and not their creators. And those contracts were designed to outlast them. That structure didn't disappear, it adapted. Which means the question isn't historical, it's practical. What happens to what you create once it leaves your hands? And who still benefits long after you're gone? Because if ownership isn't designed into the structure from the beginning, the work keeps moving forward while control stays behind.